After getting accepted into Stanford University, my parents decided to reward me by buying a small house near the campus. My brother's girlfriend, though, seems to think she has him wrapped around her finger and acts like she owns the place. She threw out all my stuff from the house and had the nerve to warn me. "Your brother is the only heir of the Sterling family, so I'm the lady of this house now. Stop hanging around here eating for free and be smart. Pack up and leave." I immediately recorded her little act on video and posted it in our Sterling family group chat on WhatsApp, writing, "If this kind of trash gets into our family, consider me, Harper Sterling, a failure. My name is Harper Sterling, and I have a fraternal twin brother, Ethan Sterling. Growing up, I was always the one being pampered by my parents, while Ethan was more like someone they picked up out of a dumpster. Take this instance as an example. I got accepted into Stanford University, which is about a 30-minute drive from home. Even though it's not far, my parents went all out and bought me a small house near campus so I could have my own private space without worrying about noisy roommates. As it happens, Ethan also got accepted into Stanford. But for him, my parents said, boys are fine in dorms. No need for private space. No fuss. Ethan practically begged me with tears in his eyes. And since I have a soft spot for him, I agreed to let him have the house for a few nights when they visited me and Ethan. Although they bought me the house, I still preferred living in the dorms with my friends, so I stayed on campus. Today, I got a delivery call saying my package had arrived and been left at the front door. That's when I realized I had mistakenly put the house address instead of my dorm address. Since I didn't have any afternoon classes, I decided to walk over and grab it. The house wasn't far, just a 10-minute walk. Standing outside the front door, I figured since I was already there, I might as well stay the night and head back to campus tomorrow. I confidently punched in the entry code, but it was wrong. Not thinking much of it, I tried again. After 3 failed attempts, all showing incorrect, I knew something was off. I snapped a picture of the error message and sent it to the Sterling family group chat. Before I could even type a message, Ethan called. "Is the lock broken or something? Why does it keep showing the wrong password?" Sis, Mom and Dad aren't visiting. Why are you home all of a sudden? What's with all the questions? What's wrong with the lock? Did you change the password?" "Sis, don't get upset. We're just about to finish class. We'll be there in a few minutes. Just wait a bit." Clearly terrified of me losing my temper, Ethan hung up in a hurry. What's the big deal? Couldn't he have just told me the new password? Annoyed, I stood in the shade waiting for Ethan. 15 minutes later, Ethan came rushing over, and I noticed a girl following behind him, walking at a leisurely pace. So that's why he said we. He's dating someone. The girl, Madison Maddie Cole, had flawless, fair skin and perfectly applied makeup. But as she walked over, she shot me an unfriendly look, as if I had interrupted her date and offended her. Sensing that I was on the verge of exploding, Ethan quickly handed me an ice-cold Coke. "Sis, this is Maddie. Maddie, my girlfriend. She's been staying here for a few days." I took the Coke, and it cooled me down a bit. But the second I realized my brother had his girlfriend staying at the house without even telling me, my anger reignited. "Maddie, this is my sister Harper. She's in the finance department at school." Maddie clearly didn't want to talk. It wasn't until Ethan nudged her that she gave me a half-hearted nod as a greeting. The atmosphere was incredibly awkward. Ethan broke the tension by punching in the new password and opening the door. The new code was clearly a birth date. It wasn't mine, Ethan's, or our parents'. It had to be Maddie's. The previous code had been set by me, but Maddie had apparently found it too complicated and had Ethan change it to her birthday. When Ethan explained this, I couldn't help myself and punched him in the shoulder. This idiot gave the house code to someone outside the family, and not only that, he changed it to something she could remember. Ethan, sensing my irritation, resorted to his usual tactic, playing the pitiful little brother. Fine, I'll let it go this time since Ethan seems to like her. After all, it was our first time meeting. Who knows if we'll even see each other again? No need to make things too hostile. But as soon as I stepped into the living room, I was in complete shock. Can someone explain why everything was pink? I had hired an interior designer to create a sleek, minimalist look. Now, the walls were covered with tacky country-style paintings and posters. Cheap, mismatched decorations hung everywhere, like something out of a bargain bin at a discount store. I swallowed my anger and walked inside. Ethan followed behind me but kept quiet. I glanced at the staircase and saw my books scattered all over the steps. The table had an empty cup of instant noodles on it, with one of my expensive hardcover books underneath it, being used as a coaster. What enraged me the most was that the upstairs suite, my room, had become their bedroom. The second floor had a shared bathroom and a master suite with a walk-in closet and private bathroom, which was originally mine. Now it was a complete mess, and they had replaced the bedding with a hideous bright red set. Surveying the scene, I saw that my vanity, which had been lined with my collection of skincare products and makeup, was now nearly empty. "Where's all my stuff?" I asked, pointing to the now bare wall where my perfumes and lipsticks had once been neatly displayed. I stared at Ethan calmly, which only made him more scared. When I'm truly furious, I go quiet. When I was little, I had a pet rabbit. A clueless relative killed it and tricked me into eating it. I calmly ate a bite of the rabbit, then picked up a baseball bat and went to their house, smashing everything I could. For the next 3 months, I visited every month to smash something new until they finally moved away. Maddie, however, seemed completely unfazed by my fury, casually sitting in a rocking chair by the window, enjoying an avocado smoothie bowl. Ethan, terrified that I was about to explode, hurriedly promised he'd replace everything that had been lost or broken. That cooled me down slightly. I grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge and strolled over to Maddie, flashing her a forced smile. "Maddie, I'm a bit of a neat freak. I don't like people touching my stuff." "Well, Harper, this is my boyfriend's house. I can use whatever I want. The owner doesn't mind, so why should you, the guest, care? There are times when having morals really sucks." For the first time in my life, I regretted letting my conscience hold me back from slapping the smirk right off her face. When my best friend Riley heard about what happened that night, she didn't hold back. "Riley, Harper, how are you not losing your mind? If that girl actually marries your brother, she'll take over everything your parents built. Harper, if she wants to marry into my family, she'll have to step over my dead body first. Riley, Harper, you'd better move back into the house and stay there for a while. That girl already thinks she's running the place. Today she stole your stuff. Tomorrow she'll probably try to sell the house." That was all I needed to hear. Without wasting a second, I packed up my essentials, grabbed my suitcase, and stormed back to the house to stay for the long haul. The moment I arrived, I went straight to my room and packed up all of Maddie's stuff, tossing it into the guest room downstairs. She thought she could just live in my room? Dream on, Harper. "Ethan, I did a little inventory check. All the perfumes, lipsticks, and skincare products that disappeared from my vanity, it adds up to $19,743. But since we're siblings, I'll round it down to an even 20 grand. On the other end of the line, I heard Ethan stammering, "Ethan, sis, I'll transfer the money in a little while, okay?" I didn't actually want the money, but something about Ethan's hesitation felt off. My parents never held back financially with us, and I've always been the type to spend without thinking. Ethan, on the other hand, has been managing his own investments since elementary school. It wasn't unusual for him to have tens of thousands saved up. "Harper, where's your money?" The second I asked, Ethan said he had to go to class and quickly hung up. But I had clearly heard the sound of a convenience store bell in the background. Something wasn't right. I planned to ask him in person when he got home. That night, I stayed up until 1 a.m. waiting for Ethan to finally walk through the door, looking exhausted. "Harper?" "So, I checked your bank account. Why is it empty?" I casually threw the question out there to see how he'd react. Sure enough, mid-bite, he froze, dropping his gaze. "Harper? Where's the money, Ethan? Did you get scammed?" I knew my brother all too well. He always had this guilty look whenever he was hiding something. "Ethan, don't you have class tomorrow? What were you doing out so late?" When he saw me sitting on the couch waiting for him, he looked nervous. "Ethan, sis, want a midnight snack?" he mumbled, setting a takeout container of fried rice on the table. He looked so run down that I couldn't stay mad. I shook my head to signal I wasn't hungry. Ethan, on the other hand, was starving. He tore into the fried rice like he hadn't eaten all day. "Harper, slow down. You didn't have dinner?" I handed him a glass of warm milk. He shook his head, then nodded, mumbling between bites. "Ethan, I ate. Sis, Maddie's family ran into some trouble, so I lent her the money." "Harper, how much did you lend her?" Judging by his expression, he'd probably given her everything he had saved over the past few years. "Ethan." 1. "Harper, 100,000? I could feel my blood pressure rising. This lovesick fool had lent her 100 grand just because they were dating? Harper, you're out of money, so now you're working at the convenience store? Ethan, embarrassed, admitted. Ethan, well, Maddie's birthday is coming up, and she really wants this purse that's over 10 grand. She wants it, so I have to get it for her, right? At that point, all I could do was smack him. Ethan took the hits, begging me not to tell our parents. Fine, no amount of common sense was going to save him from his lovesick brain, but I hoped he'd snap out of it soon. The next morning, before my alarm even went off, Maddie woke me up with a phone call. Still groggy, I answered, only to hear her yelling, "Maddie, Ethan's money is my money. Why do you care how he spends it? If you're so great, go find a man who'll spoil you. Stop meddling with your brother's life. Are you obsessed with him or something?" Harper, he's my brother. We're family. You're not even married to him. At best, you're his girlfriend. At worst, you're a temporary fling. Keep yapping and I'll shut your mouth for good. Maddie knew she wasn't a match for me. After a few seconds of silence, she hung up. But that wasn't enough for me. Still fuming, I grabbed my other two phones and sent her family a barrage of messages, letting them know exactly what I thought of her. Unable to win against me, Maddie went running back to Ethan to take out her frustration on him. Ethan, stuck in the middle, didn't know what to do. Maddie was his first girlfriend, and I could tell he genuinely liked her. That's why I never told our parents about our issues. Even though the house was technically mine, bought by our parents for me, I hadn't kicked Maddie out because I didn't want to put Ethan in an even tougher spot. As long as she stayed out of my way, I let things slide. But it seemed that my patience only encouraged Maddie to push further. It was Riley's birthday, and I'd gotten her the exact purse she'd been dreaming about. I bought it a week in advance, carefully planning everything. But on the day of the party, when she opened the box, the purse inside was a cheap knockoff. I didn't even need to think about it. Of course, it was Maddie's doing. I was ready to storm home and tear her apart, but Riley knew the situation and talked me down. Riley, Harper, don't make Ethan's life harder. Talk to him privately and get him to return the purse. No need to make a scene. What if they do end up married one day? Married? Over my dead body? There was no way I'd let someone like her into our family. Riley urged me to calm down and let it slide, and for her sake, I agreed. I'd let Ethan handle it, and I wouldn't escalate things. But when I got home after the birthday party, I was greeted by two pairs of unfamiliar shoes in the entryway. No need to guess. Maddie had invited her friends over. The living room was a mess. Empty bottles, snack wrappers, and trash littered the floor. I threw open the windows to air out the stench of alcohol. It was late, so I figured they were probably asleep. I'd deal with Maddie in the morning. I headed upstairs, only to find my bedroom door locked from the inside. Oh hell no. My temper flared. I kicked the door down in a fit of rage. The noise of the door breaking woke Ethan downstairs. Ethan. Sis, didn't you say you weren't coming back tonight? Before I left, I had told Ethan that I'd probably stay out late because of Riley's birthday and might not come back to the house. I'd even asked him to lock up. Ethan clearly hadn't expected me to return. He stared at the broken door, at a loss for words. Harper. Why is there so much noise this late? Maddie's voice whined as she trudged up the stairs, yawning. She barely acknowledged me and seemed more annoyed that I'd interrupted her sleep than concerned about the broken door. Harper. Ethan, tomorrow I want every piece of furniture in my room replaced and the door fixed. And you two, get the hell out of my room. Maddie's face burned with embarrassment in front of her friends. She tried to step forward and argue, but Ethan quickly grabbed her and pulled her back. Harper, I'm counting to 3. If you're not out by then, you'll regret it. Ethan knew I wasn't bluffing. He rushed to get Maddie and her friends out of sight. I followed them downstairs, grabbed a trash bag, and packed up all of Maddie's things from Ethan's room. I tossed it all outside. Maddie. Ethan, can you believe how over the top your sister is? Harper. Say one more word and I'll make sure you never speak again, I said coldly, reaching for a taser from the shoe cabinet. Maddie, seeing my expression, froze. After a moment, she scoffed. Maddie, this house may have been bought by your parents, but it's always been passed down to the son, not the daughter. If anyone's going to leave, it'll be you. Ethan is the heir of the Sterling family. You're just a girl who's going to get married and leave anyway. Harper. Oh, really? Without another word, I grabbed a bucket of water and dumped it over Maddie's head. I slammed the door shut behind them, locking them out. Back inside, I was still fuming. I grabbed my phone and filmed the wreckage in the house along with everything that had just happened. I posted the video in the Sterling family group chat. Even though it was late, by the next morning, my parents had flooded the chat with dozens of messages. Mom, did a bunch of robbers come through? How did the house get so trashed? What kind of girlfriend has Ethan found? She's not even officially in the family yet, and she's acting like this? Can you imagine how things will be after? Dad, he hasn't even graduated and they're already living together? What's wrong with him? You idiot! No girl is getting into this family without your mother's and my approval. Even if there's a baby on the way, we don't care. Mom, they're just dating right now, but there's no way I'm accepting her as a daughter-in-law after seeing how she treats Harper. Ethan, did you see what she said to your sister? My mom was beyond livid. She put her foot down in the group chat. Mom, from now on, if you want to be with that girl, you can move out. That house was bought for Harper, and no random person is allowed to live there. The group chat was filled with my parents' angry messages, but Ethan didn't say a word. I knew Maddie had cleaned out his savings, and he didn't have any money left. I tried calling him, but his phone went straight to voicemail. 3 days passed with no sign of Ethan. He hadn't replied to any group messages or private texts. I started to feel guilty. Maybe I'd been too harsh. I shouldn't have kicked Ethan out over a fight between me and Maddie. Late that night, I heard the door lock click. I rushed to the door and saw Ethan walk in, alone without Maddie. He didn't speak to me, just brushed past and headed straight for his room. Harper. Where have you been staying these past few days? I asked, offering him a cold Coke. He didn't take the drink. Instead, he looked at me with hurt in his eyes. Ethan, why can't you just accept Maddie? I was stunned. I felt ashamed of myself for worrying about him just moments ago. I wanted to slap myself for it. Love-struck fools don't deserve sympathy. Harper, what do you mean I can't accept her? She stole my stuff. The only reason I didn't call the cops was because I'm being nice. Ethan, don't accuse her of that. Maddie would never steal, Ethan yelled, angrier than I'd ever seen him. He's always been mild-tempered, and even though I'm the older sibling, he's always been the one to keep the peace. We've hardly ever fought. But now, here he was, shouting at me because of some girl. I didn't bother arguing. Instead, I pulled out my phone, opened the security footage, and showed him the video of Maddie stealing and swapping my purse. The evidence was clear. Ethan's anger deflated like a punctured balloon. Ethan, I'm just here to pack my things. Since you hate Maddie so much, we'll leave. After that argument, Ethan and I didn't speak for a week. He moved out and rented a small place near campus with Maddie. Since we went to the same university, it wasn't long before we ran into each other. Ethan would sometimes come up and say hi, but I'd always catch Maddie glaring at me from behind him. I had no interest in talking to them. It became clear that Maddie had some kind of hold over Ethan. She had him completely wrapped around her finger. I hired a private investigator to look into Maddie's background. She came from a family where the son was valued over the daughter. Her father was a gambler and an alcoholic who barely worked, leaving her mother to scrape by on odd jobs. They were deep in debt, and Maddie had a younger brother who, despite failing high school, had dreams of studying abroad. Ethan's $100,000 had been used to pay off their debts and send her brother overseas. She was nothing more than a manipulative gold digger. When my parents found out that Ethan had moved out, they didn't think much of it at first. They figured it was a typical young love story and wanted to see how long it would last. But I was worried Ethan was in too deep, so I told my parents everything, the missing money and Maddie's family situation. That was when they panicked. The very next day, they drove to campus and told Ethan to bring Maddie for a family lunch. Maddie was thrilled, thinking she'd finally won. She even threw a fit, demanding that I personally invite her to the lunch. Harper, come if you want, don't come if you don't. I couldn't care less, I told Ethan. In the end, Maddie showed up. At lunch, she was all smiles, calling my parents uncle and aunt sweetly. Gone was the entitled brat who had trashed my house. During the meal, my dad casually mentioned that the family was buying another house and would need to sign the paperwork over the weekend. Maddie, wow, Ethan, your parents are so good to you. They're even buying you a house. Maddie's eyes practically sparkled at the thought. Having grown up in a household where everything went to the son, she assumed the house would be for Ethan. In her mind, as his girlfriend, what was his was hers. Then my mom dropped the bomb. Mom, you're almost done with school, so having a car will be more convenient. Your father and I bought you one, she said, placing a set of Mercedes keys on the table. Maddie's face lit up, and she practically lunged for the keys. But my mom was quicker, sliding the keys over to me instead. Harper, thanks, Mom. I'll sign the papers on Saturday, I said sweetly, watching Maddie's expression sour. Maddie, Uncle, Aunt, aren't the car and house for Ethan? Mom, Boys should learn to earn things on their own. I heard Ethan loaned you $100,000. That was careless of him. He transferred it from our company's account. I assumed the funds had been stolen and already reported it. The case is being processed in court. If the money isn't returned within 3 months, the house your family lives in will be seized to cover the debt. Maddie went pale, realizing what my mom was implying. She threw a fit, yelling at Ethan before storming out. Ethan, Mom, why did you have to do that to her? I'll pay back the $100,000 myself, Ethan protested, trying to chase after her. But my dad and I pulled him back. Dad, you idiot, you're being scammed and you don't even realize it. My dad laid a stack of photos in front of Ethan, private investigator photos. Dad, you've been working late shifts at the 24/7 corner store, and while you're out, she's bringing other guys into your apartment. The more photos Ethan saw, the more his face fell. Maddie was nothing more than a gold digger. When she realized she couldn't milk any more money from Ethan, she found someone else. Meanwhile, my poor, love-blinded brother was working his butt off for her. After Ethan finally saw Maddie's true colors, he locked himself in his room and cried over his lost love. But Maddie, she was shameless. She kept coming back. I'll give it to Maddie. She had skills. Every day she would stalk Ethan before and after classes, crying, arguing, and threatening to end it all if he didn't take her back. In the end, I had to step in and threaten her myself. Harper, if you keep bothering my brother, the entire campus will know you're a shameless gold digger. That finally got her to back off. Ethan moved back home, and things were peaceful for a while. But of course, Maddie wasn't going to stay quiet for long. Harper, I've been meaning to tell you something. Riley had been acting weird for a couple of days, like she had something to say but was hesitant. Harper, what's up? I asked casually, biting into my ice cream, feeling great now that Maddie was out of our lives. Riley, look at this. Riley opened an app on her phone and showed me a post she had saved. It was from some college confession forum. I took the phone and started reading. At first, I thought it was just some random gossip, but the more I read, the more I realized it sounded disturbingly familiar. Too familiar. The post was written by a college girl talking about her crazy relationship. I was dating this guy at school. He was my first love, and we were really in love. But his older sister? She was obsessed with him. Every time we went out, she'd tag along. Even when we rented a place, she insisted on living with us. I'm easygoing, but his sister had no boundaries. She'd take all his money, make him work for her, and never paid her share of rent or bills. But that wasn't the worst part. She was a slob, drinking, smoking, and leaving the house in total chaos. Cigarette butts and empty bottles were everywhere. One night, I gently asked her to stop drinking so much, and she flew into a rage, smashing the bedroom door and kicking us out in the middle of the night. I kept forgiving her for the sake of my boyfriend because I really loved him, but my patience only made things worse. She forced me to sign an IOU, demanding I pay her $10,000 every month as living expenses. And if I ever wanted to marry into their family, I had to come up with a $100,000 dowry. I couldn't take it anymore, so I broke up with him. But she kept showing up, threatening me for money, and said she'd ruin my reputation by telling everyone we lived together. I'm scared. When will I ever be free from her? The post was dripping with tears and drama, but there were no names mentioned, just vague references to the sister. So at first I wasn't too worried. But then I scrolled down. She had attached a photo, one taken the day we all had lunch together. Me, my parents, Ethan, and Maddie. Even though the faces were heavily blurred out, it was obvious who I was in the photo. Maddie had just barely blurred mine, leaving me recognizable. This post went viral on the confession forum. It had tens of thousands of comments and shares. When I looked at the comments, my blood boiled. Gross. A sister obsessed with her brother? Disgusting. She's not just obsessed, she's a total leech. Thank God he broke up with her or he'd be doomed for life. If she's still stalking them after the breakup, she needs to be reported. Get the police involved. Wait, is that the sister from our school? She looks familiar. Is she in the finance department? Yeah, it's her. I saw her arguing with some girl last week. Underneath, a bunch of trolls started making up rumors about me. Some even posted my phone number and unblurred photos of my face. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through the comments. I thought I could let Maddie off the hook, but she was still playing dirty. Riley, Harper, calm down, Riley said, trying to take the phone from me. She could see how furious I was. Riley, here, have some water. I took a sip, forcing myself to calm down. But if Maddie wanted a fight, I was ready to go all in. Harper, I've still got the footage of Maddie sneaking into my room to swap my designer bag with a fake. I'll take screenshots of her post and the comments exposing my personal info. Let's see who wins this. But Riley was more level-headed. Posting won't help. We need to use the law to defend your rights. So, I contacted the lawyer who worked with my parents' company. Within hours, the viral post was taken down. The blogger publicly apologized, admitting the story was completely made up. They promised never to post unblurred photos of people without permission again. After that, my lawyer sued all the people who had posted slanderous comments about me. The next day, Riley and I were walking through University Square Park when we ran into Maddie. She glared at me like she wanted to rip me apart. "Harper, how dare you hire a lawyer to threaten me? Are you clueless about the law?" I snapped back, pulling out my phone to record her. "Everything you say right now is being recorded for evidence. You think a little bit of money lets you get away with anything?" Maddie tried to keep up her tough act, but seeing my phone recording made her hesitate. Still, she couldn't completely hide her anger. "You've got 9 hours. In 9 hours, if you don't post a video online apologizing and telling everyone the truth, I'll be reporting this to the police. My house has security footage of you stealing my purse. So, think carefully. Do you want to apologize or spend time in jail?" Maddie knew she was in the wrong. She shot me a glare before storming off, grumbling under her breath. But within the deadline, she posted the apology video. In the video, Maddie looked pissed, but she didn't have a choice. She apologized for lying and admitted she had made everything up to get sympathy. Her fans were furious, realizing they'd been played. They turned on her instantly, digging up all sorts of personal information about her and her family. Some trolls even started sending her eggs and funeral wreaths to her dorm. The situation blew up so much that the school had to step in. They gave Maddie a disciplinary warning. From that point on, every time she left her dorm, people would point and whisper. It got so bad that she eventually took a year off from school. After that, I barely thought about her. She was out of my life for good. The last time I saw her was 6 months after graduation. Time flew by, and before we knew it, 6 months had passed since we graduated. Ethan and I both decided to move back home after graduation. He took over Sterling Enterprises, and I started my own business. "Hey sis, still working late? I'm nearby. Want to grab a late-night snack before we head home?" Our parents didn't want us living on our own just yet, and since their house was huge, we still lived there. It made things easier anyway. Even though it was late, the parking at Woodview Mall was awful. After circling for what felt like forever, we finally spotted a free spot. There's one. I'm starving. Ethan hit the gas, heading toward the spot, but just as he was about to pull in, a woman stepped right into the space, blocking us. "Babe, there's an open spot here," she called out, motioning to a nearby car. I squinted and groaned. Of course, it was Maddie. She saw me too and smirked, waving the nearby Porsche in. "Maddie, that's our parking spot. First come, first serve." "Didn't you learn your lesson last time?" I said, stepping out of the car. "Who do you think you are? Why don't you park that junk somewhere else? This spot is for real cars." Ethan had just come back from work, driving a dusty pickup truck that looked pretty beat up. Compared to the Porsche, it definitely wasn't impressive. So what if you were? That piece of junk doesn't deserve to take up a spot meant for luxury cars. Get lost before you scratch our Porsche. Maddie planted her hands on her hips, full of herself. "Call security. We don't have time for these peasants," the man in the Porsche said, leaning on the horn as if that would make us go away. Maddie strutted off in her high heels to find security, her heels clicking obnoxiously on the pavement. "Come on, just let them have it. If you scratch their fancy car, you'll be in big trouble," the security guard said when he arrived, clearly favoring the Porsche. "We were here first." "I'm not moving," Ethan said, pulling out his phone and calling the mall's general manager. A minute later, the security guard got a call from his supervisor, and suddenly, his attitude flipped. Sorry, please park. As for you, don't you know it's first come, first served?" The security guard turned to Maddie and the man. Maddie was furious.